Well, thanks for staying with us on the program this morning. We're about to begin our newspaper review segment, and joining us in the studio is Honorable Cletus Obun. Good morning to you, sir, and welcome back from the holidays.
Thank you very much. A working holiday for that matter.
Well, it's just as Bito had mentioned earlier when you walked into the studio that you look well rested. What's the secret? Is it the fresh palm wine of
the hills of the healing country that I come from are producing. This is the best season for palm wine, enough of Hamatan, making the Hamatan very sweet. And the community is still in the mood of Christmas.
Interesting. Well,
now let's get to the business of the day.
Certainly, Bito.
It's been very busy following the resumption of the new year, and we're starting with the presidential villa where we saw the visit of Wang Yi, and there are now talks about strengthening the bilateral relationship that Nigeria and China have enjoyed over the years. More so, figures have now been put on paper, and the newspapers are agog with first the currency swap of over $2 billion. The president is asking for an increase in that amount, as it were. Let's get your thoughts from there before we begin to talk the military training intended by this bilateral agreement as well.
Well, once China is mentioned, what comes to my mind is that we are looking for alternative alliances, international alliances. The reason being that the Americans and the Europeans have constantly dominated both our political, economic, and security space over the years. The introduction of China brings us a third force, which therefore makes Nigeria a bride, and therefore gives us choices to make in terms of making decisions about what we do and improving on our own economic and security architecture. That is the first take on that matter. The figures and others are only the icing on the cake. The larger picture of having an alliance in which there is an alternative to the existing relationships, especially at the international scene, is what Nigerians should be looking at, and expect a very robust and improved relationship with so much respect. So that those who have already thought that Nigeria is an asshole, is a dung shit, is a shit hole, and all that, will now know that there are alternatives, and others are looking at us. China is not just a country. China is a force. So if China is getting interested in Nigeria, then it should tell you that Nigeria has brought itself to a place of international respectability.
And we see the images of the visit of the foreign minister Wang Yi at the State House as highlighted on the screen, and Chijoke were just about to say.
Yes. Well, I was about to mention, the topic of military training that, the president had touched on during the visit of Wang Yi. And this is also coming at a time when the Chief of Defense Staff, General Christopher Musa, had recently granted an interview on Al Jazeera, talking about the UN coming in to investigate or probe Boko Haram's funding and military and training as well. Where is it coming from? How much of an impact will this have on our fight against insurgency and insecurity across the country in general, if the deal goes through?
The deal will certainly go through, because insurgency and terrorism anywhere is terrorism everywhere. So the international community must be interested and should be interested. If Trump is talking about Greenland all the way in Europe and even across his borders in Mexico, looking for territorial conquest in the 21st century, then he should tell you that we are reversing the hand of the clock back to the primitive ages of conquest. Trump is coming to blow wind in the world, and everybody...
Even in Canada.
Yes, you can now say clearly that with the coming of Trump on the 20th, the world order is going to see another phase of our international struggles. So China coming into Nigeria this time is very timeless, is also very significant and symbolic on the international scene for us. And the UN inquiries and investigations are long overdue, because you know, as I do, that Boko Haram have morphed or metamorphosed into several vestiges of crime, from banditry to kidnapping, cattle rustling, to insecurity in the farms and food security crisis, because both are all multiplier effects of one form of crime or the other. So the coming of China, the UN interest, and Nigeria's opening up and showing up its integrity quotient and confidence of the world is very important to us at this time. And I think the President Tinubu is doing something that we are not seeing in Nigeria, but which the world is seeing and taking advantage of.
And what do you have to say about Nigeria's calls or demands for a permanent seat at the UN Security Council?
It's been there for ages and it's long overdue. If Nigeria, from the First World War that ended in 2018, after the Treaty of Versailles and the partition of Africa, what you call the partition of Africa, in the Treaty of Versailles in 1918, and the Second World War by 1945, Nigeria played significant roles in all the wars in the on the African continent. You will agree that Nigeria was not participating. Nigeria was leading, whether it is in the Congo, whether it is in Somalia, whether it is in Liberia, whether it is in Sierra Leone, whether it's in Sudan and the creation of the South Sudan state, the Sahara Arab Republic within the Maghrebian nations of North Africa. Nigeria has been in the forefront. All ground forces in the world, in almost all the wars, have been led by Nigeria. So Nigeria deserves a place, a permanent place, and it cannot be better than now. This is the best time for Nigeria to be there, and I think President Tinubu is doing well to push it up, and I think the Parliament should also deal with that. And I think a section of our Constitution which deals with the issue of ratification of treaties, which gives the President powers to go and take a treaty, sign a treaty before asking for ratification, instead of the other way around, in which the Parliament ought to ratify before it can be accepted and domesticated. Those little things are internal to us, but overall, Nigeria is long overdue for a permanent seat because Nigeria played a significant role, a major role in all war crises. International crisis of any kind anywhere in the world, Nigeria have participated, except their internal wars like the Vietnam War for America and other such wars. Otherwise, or the Falkland Wars between Argentina and UK in the 70s. All those are just matters of internal. But once there are international crises, world wars, regional wars, internal wars, especially within the African continent, the world has looked up to Nigeria to take charge. If Nigeria is doing that, and that's what qualifies America to sit there, that's what qualifies China and such other European countries that have played no role at all. If France has any role to play, it is because the Africans are there. Any role France has played in the world is from Africans.
And you think that perhaps with this recent visit by Wang Yi, there could be some possibility of China pushing for Nigeria to have that permanent?
Of course, this is what, but that's why I said it is very significant for Nigeria that we are pushing at this point to get this kind of deep relationship, unlike the pacification and the surreal and the surface relationship that we have been enjoying, or trade relations, and we are banding figures. But here is a direct move now.
A more in-depth relationship, yes, that will yield better and positive results for the nation.
Now let's talk a broader international relationship, especially with Western influences, because there's whisper about some fractions, or should I say sides, being taken, because the president mentioned it during the inauguration of Ghana's president that Africa needs to purge itself of Western influences. Yesterday, the foreign minister Wang Yi also underscored what China's position is, as he said that President Xi Jinping of China has said that China would not tolerate influences from the West in Africa. It almost feels as though this is coming off the back of whispers of some unfair treatment by certain past colonial masters who still have strongholds on certain African countries. Do you think that China's interest in this is purely from the position that they want to see Africa thrive, away from the gains that they'll be gaining as against these other Western influences which they're looking to have an upper hand on in strengthened bilateral relations?
Now, in all that you find play at the international scene and in terms of international relations, it is about interest. First, the national interest of the country. It cannot have Nigeria or Africa at heart more than Africa can have of itself.
Exactly.
So whatever they are doing is also to them, is for our own diplomatic experts and our own players on the scene to take advantage of it and see and maximize what Nigeria can gain from such a relationship. It is not a matter of exchanging one slave master for another slave master. This is what Nigeria should guard against. So there, in plain terms, for Nigerians to understand, is that with China coming now, it is like gumbo diplomacy. To say to the West, if you do not play ball, we have other partners to deal with, so don't waste my time and don't try to push down my name.
Other capable partners.
Yes, more capable, more sincere, more beneficial partners to deal with. This is what China's coming means for Nigeria and for the African continent. For
in terms of sincerity, Honorable, let's talk about the image that Nigeria has always had, maybe from a negative perception on the international scene, due to the activities of internet fraudsters and all of that has tainted the image of the country in the past, which the president, I believe we would all agree, has been working assiduously to ensure he cleanses that image. But will this have any form of impact when it comes to such deals between Nigeria and China or any other country, in line with what you mentioned about Nigeria being a more trustworthy partner than the West for China?
When we talk about internet fraud and fraudsters and all that, who is the creator of the... Is there any internet system that is created in Nigeria?
Certainly not.
So how will we become experts in the fraud of internet than the makers of the manufacturers? So I think that is a very negative question to ask in the first place, and secondly to say that the so-called image of Nigeria as fraudsters is only created by Nigerians more than any other international agency or any other country for that matter. Otherwise, they wouldn't be having and hustling to come to Nigeria to partner with us on several fronts, on security, on economy, and everything. Nobody rushes to a country that is known to be full of fraudsters. It is not true. And in any case,
full of corruption.
Corruption. Go and look at the American statistics of foreigners, migrants in America. Those who top their quality, value added interest in the American economy and the American political space. Are Nigerians not being appointed in the US and even in the UK? Do fraudsters get that? Are you saying that they are no longer Nigerians because they live in the UK? They have the DNA of Nigeria, and they are sitting there and they are being used and utilized. Is it bad enough in spite of our attitude towards Nigeria? Does she cease to be a Nigerian? You cannot be more European than the Europeans.
Certainly.
And of course, and there are good the computer wizard in the US, and several others. Look at the entertainment scene. Nigerians are being invited. Davido, Wizkid, this guy, Burna Boy, and all that. On the international side, are they not Nigerians? Go to every part of Africa and every part of Europe. Nigerian movie industry is top notch. It's among the first 5. Are they fraudsters? Is that also fake? How many Nigerians are medical doctors in Europe and America? Are they fraudsters? So why are we always talking about the small fraction of people? Are there no crimes in America? Only recently you are seeing shootings all over America. Are they Nigerians?
Certainly there are crimes all over the place. And I am not painting Nigeria in a bad light. I'm only stating the obvious, which is the fact that there are some bad elements within the country or Nigerians outside of Nigeria that have successfully tainted the image of the country. We are all working hard to ensure that that image is cleansed. The president, in the person of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, has been on top of his game. You will agree, to ensure that Nigeria's glory is restored on the international scene, and that name, being the giant of Africa, has weight again. How do we further enhance this in cleansing our name entirely? Not to say that we are saints, but how can we better it?
I think our image has been sufficiently painted in good light. With Okonjo-Iweala, with the African Development Bank giant, who was even supported by the US when they accused him of some malfeasance, some fraud. I mean, additional.
Yes.
Are we saying those top-notch Nigerians on the international scene have not given us the image that we desire? We have. Going to continuously discuss it is to suggest that we are looking backward instead of forward. I do not think that Nigeria deserves to be dragged down by just a few elements that have paled into insignificance, given the giant strides and the kind of giant image that Africa has got through Nigerians like Okonjo-Iweala at the World Trade Organization.
I believe we have evidently Nigerians who are doing their best, like you said and you've said, to keep the country flying high but our challenges are more on the internal level. And off the back of this visit yesterday, one of the standout issues that was mentioned, which is security, has the backing of China in military aid. But the challenge now is there were some insinuations that the country might need foreign mercenaries to shore up and beef up our security. But one of the newspapers, the Daily Independent, re-echoed the stance of the federal government, saying it would not at any point look to hire foreign mercenaries. Instead, the minister was suggesting that we need domestication of military equipment production here in Nigeria. I don't know if that is the right way to go. A lot of people have been saying we've been on the kinetic front for a while. We need to look more on intelligence gathering. But how important is it to have that domestication at this point in time as another alternative towards tackling our security challenges?
Now that brings me to the point that I have always made. Nigeria has enough potential to take care of its internal security. Where it needs external aid may be in terms of technology, deployment of technology, which is just on the surface of it. I do not support the issue of mercenaries because it's counterproductive. How is it compared to where all mercenaries are loyal to nobody and become on their own another phase of dealing with insurgency and internal security? Because once you bring them in and there is no more job for them, they become a crisis on their own. That is what people do not understand about the mercenary trade in international security. So it is should be completely ruled out. We should rather call for support. Which mercenaries are operating in Ukraine? Look at how the Iranian general was taken out. How was he taken out? With the aid of America, which used so much technology and deployed it, and that was the first test of it, that kind of technology. And they took him out. They took him out. They did it here in Borno, where they had one of their citizens abducted to. They sent in just 2 Marines and they came in here, took the boy home from the same forest we thought was impregnable. So I think that internally we can do so. All we can act is, like China is doing now, partnership, get our people trained also in their technology, get our technologies, and as time got the technology transfer, several countries have done that, including China, shut down their borders, trained their children, got them into America, brought them back to the country, put them into the classrooms, and then there was more of skill and hand-on trades and skills acquisition to develop what they are developing today.
I very much agree with you, Honorable. Now the challenge is in terms of the sharing demographics. Now China has broadly looked at it and said Africa, 6,000 military personnel, 1,000 police officers. Many are asking what Nigeria's percentage is in this 7,000 military personnel as a joint total that would be trained, and the calls from President Bola Ahmed Tinubu that the 50 billion naira military aid needs to be reviewed upward. Are you much worried that Nigeria's sharing formula in this has not been clearly spelled out?
No, I am very sure that these are things that you wouldn't want to display for obvious reasons. It raises alarm on the other countries. In any case, by our sheer population, some states in Nigeria are larger than 3-4 countries. That's will you want us to have the same demographic? Do you want to have the same sharing formula on 50-50 basis, on the basis of equality of states? That cannot be. So Nigeria definitely will take a better percentage. That can only be negotiated. Yes, it can only be.
This certain is the lion's share, because Honorable, yesterday we also discussed the issue with the customs application that was overflooded. We had over 500,000 applicants for just over 3,000 slots that were available to the Nigerian customs. That's where this question is emanating from, because many are asking, our population size, like you rightly stated, is quite enormous compared to other African neighbors. And with this perception, Nigeria is always looked at as the envious big brother in the room. Do you think that in this position, especially with the recent strengthened relations between Nigeria and China, won't begin to be looked at much in the bad light like the Nigerian government is accusing us of? Do you think that this is where that accusation is?
Let me tell you this is why our diplomacy has been faulty. Each time we go out to support other African countries, we do so unconditionally. Who does that in international politics? China is coming here now, not because they like Nigeria, but because they have an interest here to protect. What interest have we been protecting is taking SWAPO, Southwest African People's Organization. What did we do in Angola? What did we do in Sudan?
In Liberia.
What did we do in Liberia? What have we gained? We should be the ones controlling the economy of those countries after doing what we did there, losing so many soldiers, losing so much funds under Abacha, and then we come back, just put our hand between our legs and say we have achieved, have stabilized the place. Is that all that we need to do? Is that what America is doing in Ukraine? Is that what America is doing and warning people all over the world and telling you that we're interested in this one? Is it just because they want to show that they are the big power? Then you call Nigeria big brother?
There certainly has to be some sort of personal interest in those countries.
In national interest, we must have a national interest. So on this matter, Nigeria should be forceful about the fact, first of all, we are grossly understaffed in terms of our security architecture. Whether it is the police, it is the army as we speak. Only yesterday, the army is reporting we lost 6 soldiers in an attack in Borno State. So if yesterday we said we have 10,000 Nigerian soldiers, it's -6. So on a daily basis, they are losing that. What that means is that on a daily basis, you should be increasing the personnel of the Nigerian army. We are short on personnel. Why we are not recruiting, I cannot say. And I had also made a point long ago in the 90s in a newspaper article when I was a practicing journalist. I did an article in which I suggested that there should be a mini militarization of the National Youth Service Corps. That is to say, like Israel, a garrison state, all our corpers should be trained in the use of small arms. I said this in 1991.
And kept as reserve soldiers.
In 1991, I said so. So any corper you pick can easily be trained in the
Even the president made mention of that in his manifesto before emergence into the seat of presidency. But you saw the reaction from Nigerians on social media who laughed it off. And many were saying, is that the best the Nigerian youths can have? But we see it in South Korea and other Asian countries.
I told you, Israel is a garrison state.
How important is this in showing up
our... train as a military officer. Compulsory. You can then go and be a carpenter, go and be a lawyer, go and practice in Brazil, go and practice in Nigeria. Once they need you, they already have your database.
You're drafted.
You're drafted in.
How is it important for the citizens to come on board with this idea? Because you're saying it from an informed perspective. The president also mentioned it from an informed perspective. But a large percentage of Nigerians seem not to see reasons why this is important.
You are talking about customer and 500,000 people applying, isn't it? Ask for Nigerian soldiers and see how many people are going to apply. Several Nigerian youths are rushing to join the army. They are not being recruited.
Millions of them.
Millions want to join the Nigerian army, and then we have less than 1 million corpers every year.
And yet, interestingly, budgetary allocations for defense increases every single year.
Precisely, and it ought to be so.
Why isn't the money being allocated for defense, for recruitment, in line with the level of recruitment we're seeing?
What is happening? That's why I'm asking the question. You are asking the same question I'm asking. That we even have ready-made soldiers in the youth service. While they are there being trained, you ask them, do you want to join? Willingly, it's voluntary.
I'm sure
just
most
deal
people
with that.
Will jump in.
I know how many corpers have approached me while in service. Can we apply to join the army? I know several of them like that. They are willing to join. And they are easier trained because having been graduates, HND holders and undergraduates who are just coming, and at that age, they are less than 30.
And the orientation camps also provide a pre-screening.
And they are being trained by soldiers. They are trained by soldiers. So which is that not what you do in the military training camps in Zaria and the military schools in MDA? So that's already a ready-made camp for training. So those who now agree from there move straight to either MDA or to a regimental ground where they are trained on what to do. So it is easy for us to recruit. And then you move on. You're already paying them as corpers with a particular fee that is already prescribed. You move them up as soldiers. Once you move them up there, you already have them there on the ground. So you don't need to go and advertise for recruitment.
Now, another factor we might be quick to forget in ensuring that Nigerians are patriotic enough to serve even in the line of service is the talk about remuneration. A lot of soldiers have gone viral in the past few years for lamenting about their take-homes. Now, and even recently, some corps members were saying that they have not been captured in the newly agreed minimum wage and they're still earning 33,000 naira allowances. Do you think this might be a factor that at some points discourages well-meaning Nigerians from joining the force?
Let me say this. Some people are fascinated with the uniform. Others are fascinated with what they can get. So you get a man saying, will you want to be a lecturer or do you want to join custom? Why they are rushing to join custom is because there is money. Once you have those type of people, any job you give them, they will never be patriotic. those type, once you approach me with that
Mindset.
attitude, I don't support you. I don't even assist you, because I know that you are just going there to steal, and you bring down this country, because you are going there, you check the salary of a police, of the army, of custom, and then they want the extra money you can make by standing on the road and all that. Once you do that commutation, you now say, this is the one I want to do. Once you give me that kind of commutation, I don't support you to join, because those are the bad players you find in the professions, who go there because there's money to make, and others who go reluctantly because there's no other job to do. Those are the two categories of people. Some unemployable kind of people, that you give them jobs and they are grumbling to do the job, and so they are not happy with it. The best way to get a job done is to be in love with it. You see policemen who love their job. You see teachers who love their job, and you will see it on their faces, never waiting for salaries, but at all times.
Even those who control traffic on the highways, you see the joy
Honorable
with it.
Cletus, you will agree with me that at some point patriotism ends and the need to actually put food on the table, begins.
Let me say this to you, and this is what we were discussing yesterday with the Minister of Education. You must do something extra, especially for the teacher. In most countries, teachers enjoy special privileges. Once you can identify yourself as a teacher, the bus you enter, the Okada rider, the Keke rider that has been trained to know that you are paying 50% of the fare. If you are flying, it's the same thing. If you are buying food stuff, it's the same thing, because the sacrifice you are making is for the person to even be able to sit there. Because with an uneducated population, you are facing barbarism. So such level of barbarity is taken off by the teacher, and therefore the teacher's role is being appreciated. Some other countries as well, military and paramilitary forces, are also given the same privileges. The reason is to ensure that you don't depend only on your salary. Those privileges is what propels people to go there, and they are ready to do anything for anybody, to stake their lives, which they are already doing anyway. So why wouldn't you extend that privilege to them? At a point in controversy, I remember one governor at a point, and I think that is still going on now. Once you are teaching in a particular location, you have an additional allowance for doing so. While those in the urban and suburban, there's a general addition, then those in special areas have special needs. So to encourage people to go to those areas, especially rural areas, they have a special allowance to take as well. These are incentives that you give to promote those type of professions and make people patriotic. That's what makes it, because the country is dying for you, so you are ready to die for the country. The country is sacrificing for you, so you are ready to sacrifice for the country. These are the kind of things and privileges.
So incentivizing such jobs with the way to go. Now, it's quite sad, and this is very disturbing, especially when you look at it from the angle of the resurgence of Boko Haram. Now, a military base in Borno State, quite shockingly, the president has also ordered an investigation into how 6 Nigerian soldiers, much like you said earlier, lost their lives in a base, not as if they were deployed outside the base. Now, days after, we're seeing Katsina State also, where two policemen this morning have been reported as sadly passed on following an extended attack, with this spread from Borno now to Katsina. Does it worry you somewhat that it's resurfacing just as we thought it was dying down?
Yes, I have suspected all along sabotage, internal sabotage, that some people believe that the end of Boko Haram and insurgency is the end of capital flow into their pockets and personal. I have that deep suspicion, and it has been borne out by this particular incident. The work the military has done is such, if you have been in the field to do some private investigation and speak to some personnel, you will agree that what the army, the police, the air force have done against Boko Haram had already sufficiently reduced it to the point where we didn't expect this sudden resurgency. And I imagine that I trust the Chief of Defense Staff, Musa. Is a professional soldier, and I expect to see him swing into action to stem this rising and this resurfacing of this ugly incident that we thought we had put behind us. We're not dealing with the issue of banditry and the issue of kidnappings and other such mini crimes and minor crimes. But today, this is worrisome, this is terrific, and I know that the thinking cap of the military top brass is going to be put on, and so much is going to be done. I expect in the next few days that even the elements that are orchestrating this sabotage will definitely be fished out. I suspect sabotage more than anything else.
Your suspicions have been rightly re-echoed on some of the media publications we've seen, and over time people have linked it to terrorism financing. Some persons had purported that they had findings, credible intelligence on the names behind this terrorism financing, but as the years go by, it seems to elude everyone on who is responsible for this terrorism financing. At this point in time, how do we approach the issues of those who you are insinuating are the ones making the millions that are invested to fight Boko Haram?
I want to name the naming and shaming of characters involved. We have all along been talking about, at a point, the federal government of Nigeria under Buhari told us that they have the names of the people. We never saw those names.
And nothing was done.
Nobody ever mentioned them. There were people who are still in detention now, who are linked to financing terrorism. We have not seen their trial. And again, we are getting the same mounting of who and how we know and have intelligence. Why are we hiding them? Why can't we mention them? Americans, the European nations, when they go on the trail of any person that they find to be so, do not just go after him. Once they can't get him, he's eliminated. But in our own case, we massage them and even coddle them by petting them, not wanting them to be mentioned. Those are things that shouldn't be found in a country that is very serious about this. So I think those involved must tell us why they are hiding the names and why they are not mentioning and naming to shame them.
Well, I just received information that we might need to wrap up on this conversation, but we need to ask you on the approach by the Afenifere in the southwest, where we hear that bandits are migrating. Now they're alerting the southwest governors on the need for a collaboration, synergy between the Amotekun and other police outfits. It almost seems to now become a regional problem beyond when we thought it was just in the northwestern corridors and the northeast. How alarming is this, sir?
It's terrific. Don't forget that this is not the first time we are getting that in this country. And each time we play the ostrich by pretending that what is happening in the north, it does not concern the man in the southwest or south-south, we are playing the ostrich because it's a contagion. If you could find banditry in Libya rising after the death of Gaddafi, and the arms there infiltrated into Nigeria to the point where Boko Haram found its headquarters in northeast Nigeria, why do we think that within the same country of less than 1,000 square kilometers, we have just 923,000, less than a million square kilometers? We cannot do that. That there will be no infiltration, there will be no overlap, there will be no contagion effect that will affect other parts of the country. When on a daily basis, night and day, there is movement for trade across the place. How do you dictate what vehicle is carrying traders and which one is carrying bandits? So I think that first, the sub-regional security architecture, Amotekun in the southwest and other vigilante in the southeast and the south-south, all this should be there should be a collaboration, and the military and paramilitary forces, especially the intelligence community, must have constantly interaction and interface with these agencies and these unofficial and regional security outfits. That is the civilians version of it, where in the northeast you have what you call the JTF. And then in the south, so collaboration with them should be deliberate, should be focused, and must be sustained on a weekly basis, not a monthly basis, because on a daily basis we are being confronted. And nobody will know. When they talk about state police and others, no state police can be better than this vigilante. Convert them and give them the name you want. Call them state police or whatever.
All right, Honorable Cletus, we must thank you so much. I'm afraid time is fast running out, but it's been a very engaging conversation. And once again, welcome back and a Happy New Year.
Thank you for having me, and may Nigeria be blessed. And let us have a country where no man is oppressed.
Thank you.
Well, stanzas taken from the national anthem as re-invited under President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, Nigeria. We hail the re-echoed by Honorable Cletus Obun.